turn it over to Adam Furtado, who you've met, and Nick Setterberg, product manager at Google, sommelier, and a really great guy.
Thank you, Brian.
Also, a really great outfit.
Yeah.
Look at this thing.
Yeah.
I was told this ascot was from Hermes?
Hermes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hermes.
I wanted to be the best dressed.
You certainly were. So we're going to do something fairly quick here. We have a bit of a talk. We're going to kind of bounce back and forth a bit and try to connect the dots between learning and developing and growing people and also winemaking. And Nick's going to walk us through that a bit. So slide. Cool. That's us. So good afternoon again. You guys met me earlier. My name's Adam. I work for a company called Sagely.
Cool. And my name's Nick Setterberg. And as Brian said, I'm a PM at Google. I'm also an Air Force reservist, but most importantly, I'm a sommelier. So you see that dip W set? That means I have my wine diploma, so I know some things about wine.
Super fancy. So we're here to talk about how people learn generally.
And wine.
And how about to understand them and really support them on their growth, we need to know them individually as people.
And wine.
And wine. And we know that we're standing between you all and happy hour, so drinks will start getting passed around, and feel free to partake as we go. It's kind of part of the deal. Slide. Cool, got it.
Cool. So Adam, tell me a little bit about your trip to France recently.
I thought you'd ask that. So recently, my wife turned 40. It took her to France as a birthday present. We spent a lot of time kind of going all the way down from Paris all the way down to the south of France. Did some wine stuff along the way. And you can hear how the way I talk, I don't know a lot about wine. But as I started learning, it actually got kind of fascinating. And I found myself getting really interested in this idea of the amount of variables and nuance that go into what comes out of a bottle of wine once you taste it.
Yeah, no, that's so true. There are so many variables. For example, the same grape variety, Syrah, can have very different outcomes, whether we're having a cool climate Syrah from Santa Barbara, like the one you'll try today, or a warm climate Syrah. A cool climate Syrah, you might get notes of grilled meat and black pepper, whereas a warm climate Syrah, you might get notes of black cherry or black plum or more fruity notes.
The thing that's super fascinating is we met this guy here. He's a winemaker at one of these wineries, and it was kind of fascinating that this is an expert in wine. He knows everything you could possibly know, more than Nick, about winemaking, the things that go into it. He had a perfect plan. He knew where he was going to put stuff, the temperature of the cave, basement, I don't know. But at the end, he still couldn't control enough of the variables to get to know exactly what the taste of that wine would be like at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, there are a crazy amount of variables that go into winemaking. It might be useful to think about them in a couple of different categories. So you've got what goes on in the vineyard or the environment. Those are the variables where you have a little less control. You have the variables that go on in the winemaking, so what the winemaker does to impact the wine, and those you have a little bit more control over those. And then you've got wine law and regulations, which depending on where you are in the world, you have varied control over those.
Yeah, so this got me thinking that people are sort of the same, right? We as leaders can be in organizations and thinking about the perfect plan to get people to the place we want them to get to, support them on their journeys. But there's always these kind of new variables that come into play to make sure that we're considering and to be able to react to, because we can't, place somebody or put somebody where they want to go. It's their own journey that we're supporting.
Yeah, and so I'm hearing a lot about variables. And so when I hear a lot about variables, I think we need a framework. So I have a picture of a framework for making wine up here. And I know this is a crowd that loves frameworks.
Big time framework crowd here. We're going to get some energy. This is a crowd participation time. Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, drink whatever you want.
Yeah, please start drinking the wine.
There's
I would
extras,
never
it's
hold
fine,
you back
man.
from drinking the
this
wine.
This is a loose kind of thing, all right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're favorite frameworks. Where my DevOps people at? Where are we at, DevOps? I'll give you free booze. Somebody help me out. All right, cool.
Yeah. Any Scrum folks here?
We got some lean startup people.
Do we have any safe people here?
No, Brian didn't invite the safe people because I don't know.
You're all the frameworks,
That's what I was
think.
told.
Yeah.
I don't know. But and we talked earlier about frameworks at the kind of earlier talk here, and how it's a good way to kind of take complex systems, be able to organize them effectively in your brains, communicate them effectively. So we know that we need to take into account with these frameworks values and principles. We heard a lot about that. And even then, the kind of outcome that we're looking for isn't guaranteed. So developing people are the same. We need to make sure that we have a strategy for developing those people. And develop that strategy, we need to know about people and how people learn at a more biological level.
Yeah, similarly, a winemaker can't guarantee the outcome of the final product or the final bottle of wine. They can use different practices and methodologies to produce the wine that they want, of the style they want, of the quality they want, but not all of it is controllable. There's some of it left up to chance or the environment or what happens naturally at a biological level.
Yeah, so at Sagely, we're trying to really understand the nuance about the way people learn. And in this talk, we're going to highlight some of those things that we've come up with and thought about in creating kind of how we kind of go after that. Think about things about how people develop their own mental models in the way they learn, how you can actually change those with the how you approach learning for people, and then talk a little bit about why we want to do that as business leaders, right? Thinking about employee engagement and how we can kind of drive those things forward.
Cool. So I'm going to introduce the wines that we're going to have today. So we've got 3 wines. In your glass now is a Spanish Cava. We also have a Sauvignon Blanc from France. And then finally, a Syrah from Santa Barbara in California. And so Spanish Cava, sometimes known as just a bubbly or Spanish champagne, is a wine that some folks might know and love. And we'll learn a little bit about wine along the way. And we'll bring this list of wines back up later so you don't have to remember what all the wines are here. Cool. So let's talk about the first wine, Cava. So Cava is a wine made from 3 grapes. It's made from Macabeo, Xarel·lo, and Parellada. And when you're driving through a vineyard, if you've ever done that before, you've probably noticed that vines don't all look the same. And that's for good reason, because different grape varieties, such as the Spanish Cava varieties, typically are grown in the double cordon method or the goblet head, or also known as the bush vine training method. And the double cordon method is really suitable to environments where there's warm environments. And bush training is suitable in environments where there's a lot of drought. So they spread out these little funky little bush vines all over so they don't compete for a scarce water resource.
Cool, yeah, so we're gonna shift gears over to learning and trying to tie some threads there. The way that people learn and relearn is just as organic and biological in nature. We'll talk a little bit about this idea of neuroplasticity here. So with humans, again, there's actual biology with how we learn. So for the last few years, I've been leading various teams and trying to allow people or help people along their learning journeys, but I didn't spend enough time learning about how that actually happens within our brains. So I wanted to spend more time in creating this company to learn more about that. So this idea of neuroplasticity just talks about, particularly in adult learners, how we need to build in repetition and how experiences and challenges that humans have can actually rewire physically your brain through this kind of idea of neuroplasticity. As you kind of go through these different challenges, there are kind of these synaptic changes that actually change the way that your mental model physically is, which I thought was fascinating and allows us some idea of how we can kind of get after making those mental models change to learn new things over time and challenge your own assumptions and rethink about what you imagine kind of the world to be. So the old saying goes, kind of nerve cells that wire together, fire together, right? So it's a whole idea of use it or lose it. So I think maybe the takeaway here from a wine perspective is that if you want to know a lot about wine, keep drinking it over and over again, and then maybe you'll start repeating yourself.
Or if wine growers are growing their vines in a certain way, they can also theoretically train their grapes however they want.
Right.
So that could be the connection there too, Adam.
Yep.
There you go. Crowd participation, Sauvignon Blanc fans. Okay, I think that was the loudest cheer we've had yet, Adam. Anyway, Sauvignon Blanc is a loved grape variety. It is from France originally. So while it's from what we would call the old world, so the European producing nations of wine, grown in Loire and Bordeaux, which the wine that we have today is a Sauvignon Blanc from Bordeaux, which a lot of people probably don't think of white wine when they think of Bordeaux. They think of red wines, but there is a significant amount of high quality white wine coming out of Bordeaux. But the difference between Sauvignon Blanc from the old world or in France versus the new world, like New Zealand, for example, is that the old world wines have a lot more like minerality and like earthy notes to them, where New Zealand, like if you pick up a glass of like Whitehaven Sauvignon Blanc, any fans of Whitehaven Sauvignon Blanc?
Woo!
No? Okay, that's something you can find locally. You want to spend a little bit more, Cloudy Bay, some good brands, ask me for recommendations later. But if you pick up one of those bottles of wine and taste it, you're gonna get a lot of passion fruit and grapefruit and these strong citrus and tropical aromas that you won't get with Old World Sauvignon Blanc, like you might get grass or cat pee. Yes, cat pee. Yeah, once you smell that, you'll never not smell it again.
The transition there, I'm not really sure how to do it. So we're
Old world, new world.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right, cool. So we talked a little bit about how to change mental models. There's also some reasons that people's mental models are different from birth, from the environment they grew up within. There's interesting studies that have come out around the idea of digital natives and digital immigrants. Digital natives being people who grew up with the internet. Depends on the development timeline of a country, but in the US, it's generally people born in 1980 or after. And the idea that you grew up with access to the amount of information with the internet changes the way that your brain actually works and your mental models around how you think about certain things. I won't go all through these, but the idea that digital natives tend to view the world as networks and have less patience for bureaucracies. That might sound familiar for some of us who work in this world. Tend to be more intuitive learners versus logical. We like to learn in communities and participation. Think Reddit and Wikipedia versus encyclopedias. This might be the reason that some of you may not want to use a long manual in order to build something, as an example. You might go right to YouTube. There are physical and biological reasons that people of a certain age think a different way. And it's something we need to consider from both an empathy perspective, but also us as leaders to know your workforce. 75% of the American workforce will be made up of digital natives by 2026. That's right around the corner. This is actually different in the military. It's over 80% of the current military force is made up of digital natives. So people who fundamentally think and learn in a different way. And it'll be 13 years, won't be till 2036 until the average corporate executive is a digital native, right? So we have 13 years where the people who are defining how people should learn in their organization, in a hierarchical organization, won't be able to fundamentally understand the differences in how people learn and consume information and think about things. So that means you have to build empathy across in both directions, not just digital immigrants need to learn why people are going to TikTok over Facebook, but also digital natives need to understand that the logical way of thinking that digital immigrants usually have and support leads to better critical thinking skills, as an example. So this is empathy. So one thing I want to challenge you to do, when you go have drinks later, find a group that's got both digital natives and digital immigrants, and I think you might be able to find something, learn something new.
Cool, and the last wine that we'll be having is a Syrah from Santa Barbara that I mentioned. And while we might start with the same grape variety, Syrah, or the same country, France, the same region, Bordeaux, the same geography or climate, we end up with vastly different results depending on some key interventions or choices from the winemaker. So a couple examples that I wanted to put up on the screen are some fermentation and maturation vessels. So this particular wine, the winemaker chose to ferment it in stainless steel. Stainless steel is easy to clean, it's cheap, you can regulate the temperature, unlike fermenting something in oak or concrete where it's a little bit more difficult to control the temperature. And then this particular winemaker for this wine made a choice with respect to maturation. They decided to age it in 12 months in new French oak, but only 25% of the wine in new French oak. New French oak is expensive. So what that means is 75% of the wine was aged in oak, but oak that had been used, and therefore doesn't impart those baking spices or vanilla aromas that you would get with new French oak. So it offers enough nuance and enough like oak, but not overwhelmingly oak for this particular wine.
An example of a decision that somebody can make when making wine to try to determine what the outcome would be. We have similar decisions we make as leaders in how we engage with and work with the people in our organization. Across a variety of studies has shown a lack of employee engagement is the number one reason that digital natives or employees are leaving their jobs or are looking for new jobs. In fact, 74% say they take a pay cut to work for those ideal jobs. So the arguments around compensation and all those sorts of things we know are not actually the root cause of those things. So understanding how people learn, what they want to learn is really important to make sure you can engage with them really directly. What's interesting is I thought back to the last 5 years in this space, right? We have all these software factories in here. We've all invested a ton into developing and building people. I think a lot of us in here are products of that investment. We've spent collectively across the DoD, just in this ecosystem, over $500 million on talent enablement across those software factories, and 70% of the Air Force officers who got that enablement are no longer in the Air Force. Right? And I think that this room is really an indication of some of that, right? You can throw a rock and hit 5 of you right now, including Nick and Brian.
I'm a reservist, Adam.
Oh, sorry.
I don't count.
Okay, my bad. So the idea here is how can we, this isn't a bad thing, right? The idea of investing in our people is right, but how do we do that more sustainably? Taking into consideration our context and our constraints, one of which rapid turnover and retention that's going to be an issue to the military after all. So how do we think about that? So at Sage, we were trying to find ways to support that kind of scale and that sustainability by matching up our sages or kind of direct coaches or humans with technology that can help support that scale. That way, over time, we can have humans supported by technology, but we flip that to technology supported by humans, trying to make sustainable approaches to coaching and supporting the growth of organizations that we work with.
Cool. So as we mentioned, the bottle of wine or the end product is a result of a lot of variables. And to summarize those, what happens in the vineyard, those variables that you have less control over, the variables of what happens in the winery where you have a little bit more control. You think of the winemaker as an influencer and Mother Nature as her own boss. And then all the wine law and regulations that also have an impact on the wine. And that's what the final result of the wine is. Some planned, some unplanned, but you get a beautiful smelling and tasting product at the end of the day. And sometimes not so much.
Same with people. The transition changed, I think, with that. But the same goes for people. The idea that we can have a one-size-fits-all to how to train and grow people is ridiculous. People are just inherently different. They have different needs and interests and values and principles and experiences and egos and traumas and all the things that go into building humans and making them interesting are the same things that we need to know about in order to connect with them in the right way, engage them properly, and support their growth.
Great. So thank you, everyone. These are the wines that will be available for tasting during the happy hour. I think there's beer available too, but if you want to talk more about wine, I'll be available, and we can talk about any of these fine wines that Sagely is bringing to you all today.
Yeah, great. So just to close here, the wine glasses are yours to keep, so take those home. And can we raise your glasses real quick? Can we do a quick toast to Brian and the Rise 8 team? Awesome first day. Great job putting everything together, everybody. All right. That's it. Let's go over there and
Enjoy.
meet some people. All right.